On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast, Elon Musk gets Model 3 serial number 1 for his birthday, Model X finally fulfills the promise of its original prototype, the next-gen Tesla Roadster may be closer to production than we think, and more. What's happening, friends? Welcome to Ride the Lightning. It is the Tesla unofficial podcast, episode 102 for July 16th, 2017. And it's like a real radio morning show today, at least as I recorded. It's 7 a.m. as I record this. Normally I would have done the show last night, have the wife and child are off on a little trip with their in-laws. Some of us have to work around here. So I've got the house to myself. I had to get up real early to take him to the airport. So yeah, I feel like a real radio morning guy now. Yeah, coming at you. It is 7:10 a.m. here. No, it is good to be here for another week of Tesla news. Model 3 serial number 1, which I mentioned, I talked a lot about last week, and my take on its significance. It did officially get finished up and photographed and revealed to the world on Saturday, of course. It was finished up on Saturday. And if you're curious about it, if you haven't seen the picture on Elon's Twitter feed, it is indeed black, which I suspected it probably would be. It's got the 19-inch wheels, and it's the black interior as well, which we certainly expected because that is the word on the street that they're all going to be for a while, is black interior in order to simplify production. And it is indeed going to Elon Musk, but it's not quite as easy of a story as I would have originally predicted. I'll tell you about that in a second, but it's also got the same wood grain trim on the interior, on the dashboard, that we've seen on most, if not all, of the release candidates. Also interesting about this car, no badging on the back of it, at least as of now. At least when it was photographed for its public debut. So not only does it not have a battery badging, i.e. 75, it also doesn't even have a Model 3 badge on the left side of the trunk. I suspect this is probably to avoid revealing anything in case anybody takes any photos, any spy shots of any of the first 30 or so batch of cars that are due to be delivered at the event on the 28th. I suspect they don't want the actual battery size leaking out there, even though it already has. They just don't want to officially confirm it. We're looking at 60 kilowatt hour and 75 kilowatt hour. Now, regarding how Elon came upon this car, it wasn't just his from the beginning. Turns out, VIN number 1 was originally promised elsewhere. Venture capitalist Ira Ehrenpreis, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, he's on the Tesla board of directors. He had the rights to VIN number 1. Elon said on Twitter when he was asked about this, he said, "It's who is first to pay full price for the car. Hard rule. I have first Roadster and X, but not the first S." Of course, Steve Jerviston, another investor and a board member of Tesla, the story goes, I think I told you last week that Steve slapped his checkbook down on the table when they greenlit the S and said, "I want the first one." So apparently this gentleman, Ira Ehrenpreis, did the same thing for Model 3. However, Elon tweeting, Ira Ehrenpreis had rights to first car as he was first to place a full deposit, but gave those rights to me as my 46th birthday present. Thanks, Ira. Ira replying on Twitter, "You deserve it. Much love and respect for everything you do for Tesla Motors, renewables, and our planet. Hashtag no one works harder." So that's cool. I mean, Ira will still get, I combine them into one person, Elon and Ira. They're Ira now. No, Ira is still going to get VIN number 2, which will be really cool for him, and he'll always have a good story about that. But Elon Musk getting VIN number 1. And also this week, Elon noting that he's been spending time on the Model 3 production line saying, quote, going over the small nuances of Model 3 production. Very important that nothing sounds tinny. And then he posted a link to a Monty Python video in typical Elon humor fashion. So it's great to hear that he is spending time really combing through the line, checking these cars, making sure they're the best they can be. You recall he did that with the Model S as well in the beginning. He was spending time personally inspecting cars, going through the line. So I'm really happy to hear that he's doing that again, because that is inevitably going to result in better cars for all of us, even if it's just in the smallest of ways, like maybe they're, as he sort of alludes to about nothing sounding tinny. I know he's being a bit cheeky there, but even if, say, the way the door closes makes a more pleasing sound by the time you get your car after Elon's given some feedback on the assembly line. So that's good stuff there. Production is happening. It is, I won't say it's in full swing, because it's obviously not in full swing yet, but we're past release candidates, and production Model 3s are now being assembled. Speaking of which, Midnight Silver Metallic, the last paint color that Tesla offers on the S and the X that we had not yet seen on the Model 3, has in fact been spotted on a Model 3 release candidate and photographed in the wild. So that is good to hear. I mean, it would have been really weird had that one color not been made available, particularly since it's not one of the multi-coat colors. There are, of course, two multi-coat colors, the white, pearl white, and multi-coat red. But that is nice to see that the Midnight Silver Metallic, which is basically, it's the dark gray. It's not the original gray. You'll recall, if you've been following Tesla for some time, that Tesla switched that gray some time back from a what was originally called a dolphin gray. So it was kind of a lighter gray that, true to its name, resembled a dolphin a bit. I actually really like that gray, particularly when paired with the dark gray wheels. But this gray, the Midnight Silver Metallic, if you haven't seen it, it actually, the best way I can put it is it basically matches the dark gray wheels almost exactly. So that is the color that it is, and it is good to see it out there. So that makes it all but official. So we'll have to see now if Elon has any surprises for July 28th. Perhaps, maybe matte black. I've given my opinion before on why I think that probably won't happen, at least not for the time being. But we'll see if maybe there are any other surprise colors. Maybe signature red, even though that's kind of since been debunked. It appears that signature red that I was freaking out about was in fact rather than actual signature red, it was just sort of either a weird camera or weird lighting or both. I'm not sure, but in any case, it looks like it's the standard run of colors, and that's good, because now you can go to any Tesla store you want and at least see them in person, because you got to see them in person. Don't rely on the design studio, because those are renders. That's not a good representation of what these colors look like in real life. Moving on this week, I wanted to bring up something that I managed to totally forget about last week in my excitement over the performance updates to Model S, and that is the Model X seating change. This is a big deal, particularly for families and a lot of the original reservation holders of the X. This really stuck in a lot of people's craw, and Tesla now finally rectifying it. The 7-seat Model X now features a fold flat second row. So they've changed the seat design for the row 2. It is not the monopost sculpture, quote unquote sculpture seat anymore in the 7-seater. The 7-seater will instead, there is sort of carry-on space underneath the seats, which is nice, but they fold down along with the third row, of course. So now you can finally, if you go back and look at the original prototype unveiling of the Model X from too early, I believe it was January, if not January, then February, January of 2012. It was, in fact, before the Model S shipped. They showed the prototype for the X, and they very famously show everything folding down, and you just have this absolutely cavernous amount of cargo space. So that original promise of the prototype has now been fulfilled. If you do still like those sculpture-like monopost seats, which, I mean, hey, they are beautiful. They're just they're very, very gorgeous if you've seen them in person. But again, not just, clearly not as practical as a full fold-down seat. You need to order the 6-seat Model S to get those seats. And of course, the 6-seat option has the space, the gap in the middle, unless there's now of course I mentioned it several shows back when they announced it and implemented it, there's that optional second row center console that you can get as well. So I would think with this change for with the 7-seater, I've got to figure that the Model X should now have the best-in-class cargo capacity of any SUV, because I know that previously, I believe it was a Volvo, maybe the XC90, I think, that had edged it out because of those second row, the lack of folding in the second row there. So good stuff from Tesla. It took them a year and a half to finally sort this out, but it's good to see that they did, and I suspect that should help. It might not noticeably goose Model X sales, but it's probably one of those things over time where it'll do it will have a positive effect. And granted, reviews are all done for Model X at this point. You probably won't necessarily see a lot of press on this until publications start maybe reevaluating the X and taking second looks at it. But word will get around, and certainly when people visit the showrooms, it will be apparent to them that, like, oh, okay, well, and that'll really help to differentiate the S from the X, because taking the word of many a Tesla owner, Model S and Model X, apparently the S actually had more functional cargo capacity than the X did, because the S can fold those seats down and just had the big flat cave effectively to put things into, and those the seats that didn't fold down in the X really limited that the amount of stuff you could cram in there. So good stuff from Tesla there. Now I want to say the performance I was talking about last week with the increase in performance on the Model S75 and the very, very slight increase on the Model S 100D. The next gen Roadster may be coming sooner than certainly I thought. Because this is a scoop from Teslarati and my friends Kim and Pedram over at Like Tesla, their YouTube channel. Tesla has added a secret reward tier to the referral program. If you look on the Tesla app, they have a loot box in there now. So they're kind of taking the gamification of the referral program and taking that to the next level. So there is a screen now. If you make 5 referrals, which Pedram and Kim have made many more than that. They apparently lead the world in referrals this year. That was actually pointed out on stage by Tesla at the Franz von Holzhausen Q&A that I attended at the factory tour event last month. Anyway, so you unlock a screen if you make 5 referrals. You go in there and it says, "You've unlocked the first secret level. Refer 5 more friends for the ability to purchase a Founders Series Next Gen Roadster at a 10% discount. Unlock new levels with every 5 referrals for an additional 2% off per referral and amazing adventures that money can't buy. Get to 100% for a free Founders Series Next gen Roadster. Further details on our next gen Roadster will be announced at a future date. So, hello. That was unexpected. I mean, Elon has acknowledged the Roadster in the past. However, the Roadster wasn't even mentioned on Master Plan Part 2, which, gosh, is that this year or is that last year already? I've lost track of time. But in any case, it was, the Master Plan Part 2, laying out the big goals for the next 10 years of the company. Next Gen Roadster wasn't even mentioned. We knew it was coming, but clearly it didn't seem like a huge part of Tesla's roadmap. But it's there, it's on there, and it looks like maybe it's coming sooner than we think. Now, 100% of the goals in the metagame, that appears to be 55 referrals, because you have to do 5 just to unlock the ability to start the quote-unquote game. And then it's 2% per referral after that. So I believe you have to get 55 referrals for a free Tesla Roadster, let's call it the 4.0, because the final iteration was the 3.0, which is if you take your 2.5, which was the last run of production Tesla Roadsters, and you did the battery upgrade, then you got an R80 badge on the back of the car, and your car is designated a Roadster 3.0. So I am not at all the first person to suggest this, but I am in complete agreement with it. I now wonder, along with, again, many others, if Elon's cryptic hint about the whole, you should really come to the semi-truck reveal, I wonder if that means that the next-gen Roadster prototype is going to roll out of the back of that semi-truck trailer, Knight Rider style. I mean, Elon is nothing if not a fan of pop culture Americana. We've seen that time and again. In fact, I just talked about, granted, like Monty Python's not Americana, but we have seen Elon's pop culture awareness and his affinity for pop culture many, many times in the past. So I wonder if they're going to talk all about the Semi and say, here's the Semi and there's everything it's going to do, and it's going to hopefully disrupt the trucking industry, and then he's going to pull a straight up Steve Jobs and one more thing, and then the back of that trailer is going to open up and out's going to roll the prototype for the next gen Tesla Roadster. That would be pretty cool. I will say, I really thought that Model Y was going to be the next car. That's the one Elon has talked up. That's the one Tesla has given the most information about, and maybe it still is. But let's say that the next gen Roadster is revealed in September, and I will say, as cool as it sounds for it to go that way, I still have a bit of trouble wrapping my head around that, because I feel like a reveal at the Semi event in September would take the focus not only off of the Semi, but also even potentially the Model 3, because September is probably around when non-employee, let me rephrase that, because all Tesla employees are customers, they're paying full price. When, let's just call them public deliveries, non-Tesla employee deliveries, are probably going to be starting in around September. So it would seem like the next-gen Roadster might be a bit of a distraction from that, even though the Roadster is obviously a completely different segment of the market. But anyway, a case for it to happen as part of the Semi reveal in September is that it absolutely would make headlines everywhere, whereas the Semi probably will. I mean, it's Tesla. Everything they do, for better and for worse, gets a lot of media attention. But where a lot of people might just scroll past a Tesla Semi reveal, they're going to stop and look and click and read if there's a next-gen Roadster story in there as well. Pure speculation now on my part, because of course this announcement, this crazy reveal via the referral program, gets me thinking. First of all, I have to imagine that Tesla is going to produce way more than 2,500 of the next-gen Roadsters, because that's how many of the original Roadster they produced when obviously it was a contract with Lotus. They were just getting started. It's going to be way more. And I wonder how many per year. It's going to be interesting to see how many next-gen Roadsters per year. Maybe 5,000? I mean, that's still... 5,000 is... that's about 1,000 a month. Right? So... I don't know. I guess the demand will dictate it, but I also think that this is going to be a $200,000 car. The first Roadster, when it debuted in 2008, started at $109,000 before any tax incentive, which took it right down to just over $100,000. But by the end, by 2012, when the final Roadsters, the 2.5s, were being produced, if you had all the options on there, so there were some different carbon fiber, exposed carbon fiber options, and wheel options, and you get the Roadster Sport, which was, the 0.2 of a second quicker to 60 than the standard Roadster. The final Roadsters got up to a sticker price of like $150,000 to $160,000 or so. So I've just got to figure that, given that this is clearly, almost certainly going to be a much more refined car that Tesla's going to build themselves. I expect it to be a bit of a bigger car because the Roadster is very small. It's a modified Elise. I know Elon kind of has gone out of his way to try and disprove that a lot. It's like, only 6% of parts are shared, but this is it was clearly a car obviously built off the Elise platform, and my point is only that it's sized as such. It is a bit bigger than the Elise, but the Roadster is not a big car. Trust me, I just spent a week living with one. So, it'll be a bigger car, more refined, a lot more creature comforts, autopilot, the whole 9 yards. And, you remember the tweet I read you from Elon, I guess a few weeks back now, where he basically suggested that 0 to 60 in 2 seconds flat he said it would be, quote, interesting, but it would only count if you could do it straight off the production line with street legal tires. So I would think that's what Elon Musk is going to be aiming for and is aiming for with the next-gen Roadster. And as such, I've got to expect that's going to be a $200,000 car. So the chance to get a free one makes me wish I had a Tesla, because particularly an S, because then I'd be able to be giving out my own referral code. Believe me, I'm extremely grateful to all of the listeners who have kindly donated their code to me, just again for the lottery's chance of winning the Model S or Model X. But 55 referrals. Somebody's going to do it, and I'll actually bet that Tesla's going to be surprised at how many people. I think it's going to be more people get there than they expect. But Founders Series too, which means one of the first batch. Also, the fact that they're doing a Founders Series next-gen Roadster, they did not do that with the Model 3. So I wonder if that means a Signature Series Roadster will come back as well, since, and it makes sense. The Model 3, it's their mass production car, their first truly mass production car. They didn't want to do a special line. They just wanted to get them out, get them going. But, the Roadster is, as I just mentioned a minute ago, almost certainly going to be, if not, relatively limited production. So I wonder if they will, in fact, do a Signature Series. And we'll wait and find out on that. Next this week, 20 stall superchargers, big supercharging stations, are under construction in Burbank and Albany. And in fact, an even bigger one is under construction between San Francisco and LA, which Electrek got the scoop on. And the point, there's really not too much to say about those, other than just to alert you of it, that it's happening. So whether you're an existing S or X owner, you should be reassured that yes, Tesla is taking steps to keep up with and hopefully stay ahead of supercharger demand. And if, like me, you are waiting for Model 3, then that should be reassuring to you as it is to me that Tesla's making good on the promise to build these out so that when all of us Model 3 owners start flooding the roads in huge quantities here over the coming 1 to 2 years, that the supercharger network is ready for it. I would have to imagine that these larger stations, these 20 plus stall stations, will probably start on the coasts and work inward just as the original supercharger network itself did. They started on the coasts and came inward. And, you know, I would have to think Harris Ranch, for those of you who are existing Tesla owners, which is north of Los Angeles. It's a very, very popular spot on the I-5 corridor between San Francisco and LA. I would have to think Harris Ranch is going to be a good candidate for a substantial upgrade, provided the infrastructure exists there to support it. But I started picturing, it's going to be cool to see these 20 stall superchargers full of cars, right? Like, you know, a gas station, any gas station, a busy gas station might have around 15 to 20 cars in it, right? Like the busiest gas station that I can picture in my head around my area has probably around 20 total spaces, 20 pumps. So just picturing, 20 EVs, 20 Teslas supercharging, I mean, that'll make for a really cool photo op as like, hey, look, here's the continued forward progress of the electric vehicle movement. It'll be great to see it just full of electric cars all on the road, all, helping accelerate that transition to sustainable transport. Speaking of accelerating, Tesla is announcing an accelerated service program upgrade that is on the way soon. According to Elon Musk, the service program will be updated in the, quote, very near future, not like the faraway future, he said in a very Shaggy-like voice. Like the very near future, Scoob. Sorry about that. It's early. As you can see, I've got a little too much energy to start the morning. Tesla is going to be rolling out 100 new service centers. They have about 150 or so now, so that is almost a doubling. Electrek notes that Tesla claims that their service procedures, their service centers, that's all I'm looking for, will be 4 times faster than conventional shops while operating in spaces 3 times smaller. So again, efficiency, whether it's production, whether it's the cars themselves, and now that's being applied to service as well. Tesla trying to rethink their entire approach to service to try and get people in and get people out. They're also adding over 350 new mobile service vans because Tesla noting that, hey, we can diagnose 90% of issues remotely, thanks again to that over-the-air connection that enables so much good stuff in the cars. In order to facilitate all this, they'll be hiring 1,400 new service technicians, which is fantastic news. And I thought this was neat. I'll appreciate this when the time comes. You will soon be able to schedule a service appointment directly from your car, right from the screen in your car, which is great. I mean, that's the peak of convenience right there. If your car does need something, they diagnose it over the air, and then you can just right on your screen make an appointment. Of course, I hope I never need to schedule an appointment at all, but you'll need your checkup from time to time just to evaluate the battery pack every year or two. Is what Tesla recommends there. And finally this week, Tesla noting that the fleet has crossed 5 billion, with a B, lifetime miles. In Elon Musk speak, that is 17 Earth to Mars round trips. And 1 billion of those, by the way, were added in the last quarter alone. That means this is going to start going up at a much faster, dare I say even exponential rate in the next 1 to 2 years as not only more and more S's and X's continue to hit the streets, but as the Model 3 ramps up in production and starts to flood the streets. That'll be good stuff. That is it for the news this week. I'm going to come right back. We've got plenty of excellent callers lined up in the Ride the Lightning hotline with a number of very interesting, relevant topics to discuss. So stay tuned for that right after this. Time for your calls in the Ride the Lightning hotline. If you've got a question, comment, or discussion topic, give me a call. Toll free anytime. The number is 1-888-989-8752. That's 1-888-989-TSLA. Or you can just record your question on your smartphone, your voice recorder on your smartphone, and email me that file. Send it to teslapodcast@gmail.com. But I want to thank lifeonrecord.com for, of course, continuing to provide the Ride the Lightning hotline. If you know someone special with an upcoming birthday, anniversary, graduation, or some other special occasion, you can give them a unique gift of recorded voices from friends and family telling them why they're special. The recordings can be podcasted or put onto a keepsake. Let's start with Zach in Baton Rouge, who thinks that the Model 3 production expectation not being as optimistic as the original plan could be a good thing. So, Zach, you're on the air.
Hi, Ryan. This is Zach again from Baton Rouge. I have a comment about the Model 3 production numbers. They are less than they were previously reported, but I'm looking at it a different way, and I think it's actually great news for Model 3 reservation holders. If you go by their old numbers, what they were saying they would produce like 10,000 a month in August and up to 20,000 a month in November, they would have hit the 200,000 mark and started to phase out in November if you include the Model S and X sales, if they would have continued as they did last year. But if you look at the new numbers with the slower production rate, which is 30 in July and maybe 20,000 in December, then at the end of December, if Model S and X sales are what they were last year, they will actually be at 195,000 by the end of the year, which would be perfect for starting to phase out January of next year, which we have tax credits not expire completely until September of 2019. And I think that's a lot better than getting your Model 3 a couple of weeks early. Thanks for taking the call. I love the show.
Thank you for the call, Zach. And before I forget to, I did want to mention the July bonus episode of Ride the Lightning is up on Patreon for the $10 and up Patreon supporters. That is, of course, all of the excellent calls that I get each and every month that I just can't fit in, just don't have time to get in on the regular weekly episode. That's Ryan from Denver's on there, Lawton in Chicago, Aaron in Connecticut, Jason in Newport Beach, Jeff from Grand Rapids, Matt from Nova Scotia, Jim from Idaho, Michael from Millbrae. Lots of cool stuff discussed on there. So if you are a Patreon supporter at the $10 or higher level, be sure to log in and download or listen to that because you've got some more goodness from the Ride the Lightning hotline in there. Now, Zach, your call. You have a good point. Although I think it's a bit more about the timing of when Tesla crosses that 200,000 threshold. Ideally, they'll game it to be on the first day of a new quarter, because then they'd effectively get a free quarter out of it in order to give full tax credits, to every single car they sell before that multi-quarter phase-out begins, that gradual phase-out. Now, the good news is that if all goes well, it looks like there's a decent chance that Elon will be able to fulfill his promise, although, okay, I guess it wasn't a promise, just more of a tweet, more of his thoughts in a tweet. But anyway, his thought that just about everyone on the original reservation list should get at least some portion of the credit. So, Zach, thank you for your call. Our buddy Mike in Charlottesville calls in again this week, wonders if a Tesla owner who reserves a month after him might still get priority. Let's talk about this. This is always a topic that applies to all of us, whether you're an owner or not. So, Mike, take it away.
Hey, Ryan, this is Mike from Charlottesville. So I am a Model 3 reservation holder. And my question for you is, I did not reserve mine on day one, but I reserved it about a week or two after they released it to the public. So if a Tesla owner was to reserve theirs, say, months after me or shortly after me, would they still have preference over me, or is it still based on timing rather than if you're a current Tesla owner? So I'd like to see what you think about this, and thanks. Bye.
Unfortunately, Mike, we just don't know. Tesla has never clarified exactly how that whole priority system works. I mean, we have to presume that there was no expiration date on that, and thus, if you're an existing Tesla owner who put down a Model 3 reservation today, or let's phrase it this way, that if you've got an existing Model 3 reservation and you don't already own a Tesla, so like me, and an existing Tesla owner in your area put down a Model 3 reservation today, we have to presume for now that they might be ahead of you in line. Now, the thing is, the reason we can't really know is because there are so many other factors. You know, they're starting on the West Coast. Where do you live? And what are you ordering? And, you know, where is your place in line? And are you a Tesla owner? And are you a Tesla employee? So there's so many variables to this that we just don't know. But again, Tesla hasn't said one way or the other. I mean, I hope it's not like I said. I hope it's not a case of if somebody in your area that's a Tesla owner jumps on the list tomorrow, that they move ahead of you and you camped out on March 30th to get yours on first thing on the 31st. I mean, that would be a little unfortunate. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's ultimately not going to make much difference as far as when you get your car, but we still don't know. So hopefully somebody can get clarity out of Tesla before production really hits high gear. Elon doesn't take questions at the events, it's not a press conference. So sadly, I probably won't get to ask him if I am able to go to the July 28th event. But hopefully somebody will get a hold of him or a representative at Tesla and maybe get some clarity on it before Model 3 production really ramps up. All right, let's go now to two callers with the same track of thought here. They're both commenting on the IIHS crash test situation from a week or two ago. You're going to hear from Paul in Texas, and then immediately after, Evan, and then I will reply to both of those guys. So gentlemen, take it away.
Hey, Ryan, this is Paul from Texas. I just heard what you said about Tesla and Elon taking a little shot at the IIHS testing. But you do have to remember that IIHS testing is for the insurance industry, and we're already starting to hear noise about insurance companies wanting to double or triple premiums on Teslas because apparently Tesla drivers get into more accidents or something like that. Anyway, it's not totally unfounded. It is kind of snippy, but I don't know. I think it's worth looking into a little deeper. Thanks. Love the show. Bye.
Hi, Ryan. It's Adam from Denver, Colorado. Huge fan of the show. Love Tesla a lot. Love your show. Love hearing about Tesla for an hour or so each week. It's where I get a lot of my news. Do a lot of my own research, though, which is why I was calling, actually. Was listening to episode 101, talking about the 2017 Model S getting a less than perfect safety rating again. I was unaware that the 2017 Model S had gone under safety test, but I was aware of the 2016 model, and I'm listening to the podcast in my car right now, and I called because I could have sworn a week or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, I had seen a video come out on my recommended page on YouTube telling me, showing a comparison between the Model S and a couple of other full-size four-door sedans around the same price point, and it was showing the small overlap test. And it seemed to me visually, I'm not a safety guru or a safety analyst, I should say. But visually, like from my standpoint, it seems that the Model S was performing 200 to 300 times better than the other vehicles. I mean, just visually, you could tell the car seemed to have handled it better. I know previously Tesla has been under some heat because they are disrupting, the car industry in every way possible. And so I was just curious if you thought there was any other motives for the IIHS to maybe give them a different rating, or if you were under the impression that the IIHS is a completely unbiased test. Just curious. I don't know too much about that process or about that side of the industry, but I have always loved Teslas for their safety, and one of the things that always stood out to me was they were always able to make a car with a perfect 5-star safety rating in every category. So with this, I just kind of wanted to get your 2 cents on it and see if you thought that it was deserved, or if you thought that maybe there is some ulterior motive. Not 100% sure. Just wanted to hear your take on it. I want to hear you go into it a little bit deeper. But even if you don't, thanks for your time. Appreciate you letting me make the call. Thanks. Bye.
Guys, thank you for your thoughts on this. And Evan, I know you weren't even putting up the appearance of trying to be definitive about that in your call, but we have to go by the IIHS's numbers and measurements, because the eye test can only tell us so much. It's it's like, I'm a big baseball fan, and analytics have taken over baseball, and the old-fashioned scouts who grade players on just the eye test. There's those guys are not being as valued anymore. The eye it's you got to go by the numbers. What does the data tell you? And I'm not saying that Tesla is necessarily wrong, and that there aren't in fact biases in play. What I had a problem with on last week's show was how Tesla handled it. I mean, if the IIHS is wrong, Tesla needs to show that rather than just complain about it, in my opinion. If there's a bias or there's an unfair subjective evaluation, Tesla needs to show that, like they've been so good about with so many things in the past. For them to simply deflect blame, as I was talking about last week, in my opinion, that was just a very un-Tesla-like response, because to me, they're better than that. So, Paul and Evan, thank you for those calls on that topic. Let's go now to Kyle in New Jersey. 2 more calls. Kyle in New Jersey, first up, he has ultimately an autopilot question, but before that, he has words that warmed my heart and made me feel real good. So Kyle, take it away.
Hey Ryan, this is Kyle from New Jersey. Just calling because I kind of wanted to say thank you to not only you, but also kind of anybody who's had a part in this podcast, whether they've called in or just had anything knowledgeable to offer, because I've been fortunate enough to have just landed a job with Tesla this past week. It's a brand new role called Customer Experience Specialist, and I owe a lot of my knowledge and passion for Tesla to this podcast. I would not know nearly as much, be half as knowledgeable, or as passionate as I am about the company if it weren't for this podcast and all of the great information and discussion that you bring. Aside from that, I guess just one question. I'm thinking about, how autopilot has been rolled out in kind of waves on every other platform, whether it was, Model S or X, and it was also rolled out in waves once Hardware 2 came along. Just thinking about is there any information on the situation for the 3? I haven't come across anything that says, full self-driving, or well, not necessarily full self-driving, but maybe, enhanced autopilot will be available as soon as the Model 3 is out, or is it going to be one of those things where, the car needs to become kind of acclimated to itself, and then we get, steps of autopilot as the months progress. So, yeah, just wanted to say thank you and, offer that question up. So thanks so much.
First of all, Kyle, thank you for that. Really, you genuinely made my day when I first listened to your call a couple days ago. I mean, out of so many wonderful calls from so many nice people that I've gotten on this podcast over the past 2 years, yours definitely ranks up there as one of the nicest, and it means a lot. Thank you so much. And by the way, congratulations on that new gig at Tesla. That is fantastic. All I ask in return is that you tell everyone at Tesla about this podcast and suggest that they listen to it. Let's get everybody in the company listening. Anyway, to answer your question, the S and X Autopilot have rolled out pretty much in tandem. Model X had Hardware 1 Autopilot from the day it released, at least as I recall. Please, if you are a Founders Series or even Signature Series Model X owner, please correct me if I've got that wrong, but I believe I've got that correct. So, point being, there's really no reason to believe that the Model 3 won't have feature parity with the S and X at all times in the Autopilot department. And I'm talking right from July 28th. I mean, yes, of course, the Model 3 has its own release of the software. It obviously, so does the X, by the way, even though the S and the X are, it's the same screen, that same 17-inch portrait-oriented screen. They still have their own slight versions, because obviously, of course, the X software has all the door stuff in it and what have you. Anyway, and the Model 3 has the totally different UI. At least the UI design is completely different. Anyway, there's no reason to believe that the Model 3 will not have feature parity with S and X's Autopilot right from the jump, and it'll continue to evolve at the same pace. Meaning, I don't think you'll see the S and the X get major Autopilot updates before the 3 gets it. I think they'll all always roll out in tandem, especially when you consider the fact that the Model 3 fleet is going to outgrow the S and the X fleet combined in the next couple of years. So wouldn't worry about that. We should all be getting super cool Autopilot that's the same Autopilot as any Tesla owner has. All right, final call this week comes from Scott in Fort Worth, Texas, who wonders, well, I'll let him ask it. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey Ryan, Scott here from Fort Worth, Texas. I've got a bit of a pessimistic question for you today. Let's say that hypothetically in a couple years' time, more and more companies get on board just like Volvo did, and Elon's dream of a world of completely sustainable transport actually comes to fruition. Now what if, as a part of that, unfortunately Tesla as a smaller new company just loses out through that natural competition? Basically, what happens to our vehicles then if the company who made them is no longer able to keep up service centers to service our vehicles, to service the charging stations? We can't get over-the-air updates anymore, things like that. Do the competing companies or whoever chooses to buy out Tesla, and then the employees then are able to continue servicing the vehicles under that new company? Does Tesla then just switch to a maintenance company to service its existing vehicles and other electric vehicles of that same kind? What do you think would happen in this scenario? Basically, the root of my question is, how much of a gamble are we taking as consumers in purchasing a vehicle whose value is actually directly tied to the success of the company that made it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks again for the podcast. I appreciate everything you do. Take care.
First of all, I don't think this will happen. The good news, Scott, I think we are way past the point of Tesla failing. They're, by one metric, which is, of course, the stock valuation and thus overall value of the company, they're the most valuable automotive company in the world. Although, I know the stock dropped a bit over the last couple of weeks, and that's not officially true. Anyway, they're right there. And I know that in and of itself is a loaded topic full of arguments on both sides about whether or not that really means anything. Anyway, even with other auto manufacturers finally getting on board the EV train, Tesla's still light years ahead of them for two primary reasons, in my humble opinion. Number one is the supercharger network. Tesla has been investing in that infrastructure for the past 5 years. I just did a story this week on the efforts going into expanding and growing the supercharger network. You simply cannot build a high-speed charging network overnight, even if you have a lot of resources, like a lot of other car companies that are bigger than Tesla in, if not the valuation sense, then in the sheer just force of manufacturing and production kind of sense. Now, and you remember too, as when Tesla invested in their supercharging network initially 5 years ago, Tesla had very, very few resources. But the fact is, it still takes time. You've got to identify the sites, and there's so much. You got to build them. There's so much to it that it simply cannot occur overnight. Which is probably why we've heard stories. JB Straubel has commented that Tesla is talking to other manufacturers about sharing the supercharger network, because there is a mutual benefit there, right? It's of benefit to the other auto manufacturers because they don't have to invest and put up the money and build it themselves. And for Tesla, it accelerates their mission statement. So that's I think why we will see it at some point. The question is just whether or not it's sooner or later. Anyway, reason number 2 why I'm not too worried about this is over-the-air updates. I'm talking about fleet learning. Until every car company starts keeping their cars connected over the air to the mothership cloud on a 24/7 basis, the way Tesla has done from day one of the Model S program, Tesla's going to be able to use fleet learning and software updates to stay way, way ahead of everybody else. They just are. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. They're going to be able to use that data to learn exponentially faster than their competition. But let's entertain your scenario for a moment, though. And I can actually speak to this because I owned an orphan car for 12 years. What I can tell you would probably happen is that there would be an entire community that would spring up around the car. That community really already exists. So, yes, over-the-air updates would probably go away, but parts for the cars would be almost certainly readily available. And if they weren't, they would probably be manufactured by specialty boutique Tesla service places that would fill in the absence of Tesla themselves. You'd see, again, these sort of specialized service shops, third-party service shops spring up. I'll tell you, there's a place I drove by one time in San Francisco that had 4 Fisker Karmas outside, and they looking on their sign, they seem to specialize in electrics and sort of hybrids. So that place, I mean, I would have to guess that that's exactly what the Bay Area Fisker Karma owners are doing. Like this garage, this shop is that's their support system now for if you're a Fisker Karma owner. So I think places like that would pop up, and I think it would be okay. Although many of the less hardcore people that own Teslas now, I'm talking maybe your average family who bought the car for its safety or for whatever reason they bought the car, but they're not a Tesla fanatic. Maybe a lot of them would probably sell their cars because they just wouldn't want to deal with the increased level of commitment and really the increased level of enthusiasm that it would take in a Tesla being dead scenario to own and maintain their car. But I can almost promise you from personal experience on this that it would be okay if it did happen. But I don't think it's happening. Thank you all so much for your calls this week. Great stuff. Keep them coming. The toll-free number to dial in anytime, day or night, leave a message, 1-888-989-8752. That's 1-888-989-TSLA. Or just record your question on your smartphone, email me the file to teslapodcast@gmail.com. Be right back to wrap things up for you right after this. All right, I mentioned earlier that the July bonus episode of Ride the Lightning, featuring all the excess awesome Ride the Lightning hotline calls, is up on Patreon, patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Tesla Podcast. That's the $10 and up tier, gets you the bonus episodes each and every month. I want to thank everybody. If you are supporting me on Patreon, if you're not, maybe take a look at the Patreon page that I just gave you the URL for, and maybe consider it. It's all I ask is that you take a look. I want to thank the Patreon producers. These are our latest one. His name is Sean Fournier. Welcome, Sean. Thank you so much for your support. And Sean is joined, of course, by Jeff Bartram, Paul Hussey, DJ Harbaugh, Pete White, Wolfgang Obergen, George Cassiopo, ZL Klein, David Brander, Jonathan Wales, John Waltauer, Scott Gillis, Michael Lucas, Alexi Heft, Lisa Kaz, Michael O'Prey, Logan Willis, Matthew Parra, Michael Lester, Johnny Ford, Robert Miracle, Kyle Stover, Vince Vaughn, John Lasher, Harold Plug, Jason Chalukas, Charlie Payne, Emotion Rentals, Richard Ouellette, Andreas Cohen, and that is everybody. Thank you all so much. Abstract Ocean, outfit yourself and or your Tesla and get 20% off. So visit abstractocean.com. Use the coupon code RTL Podcast. That's all one word at checkout. Use that code at checkout to get 20% off of your order there. If you're buying a Tesla, get yourself $1,000 off and free unlimited lifetime supercharging, which is otherwise unavailable anymore. Use the referral code Gordon1872. So the easiest way is just put this into your browser, because that's probably where you're going to configure and place the order for your car. The link to type in is ts.la/Gordon1872. That's Gordon, Gordon1872. Thank you to Gordon in Hawaii for lending me his referral code this quarter, or whatever this referral period ends up being. You can follow me on Twitter at DMC_Ryan. Email me, teslapodcast@gmail.com. And that about wraps it up. I guess I'll mention real quick too, because just it's on my mind since a new episode went up this week. If you happen to follow me if you have any interest in my video game work, my day job stuff, I do an interview show, a Charlie Rose style thing on IGN called IGN Unfiltered. They're hour-long, super deep dive conversations with renowned game creators and video game industry people. It's kind of a passion project of mine. The episodes are once per month. Just posted a new one with one of my all-time just game designers I admire most, Warren Spector. He is the creator of Deus Ex. He's the creator of Ultima Underworld. He did Disney Epic Mickey, System Shock, just an absolute legend of a guy, and had a wonderful, about an hour and 5-minute conversation with him. So you can look that up on YouTube or IGN.com if you're interested in those kind of deep dive things. If you're not already subscribing to Ride the Lightning, please do so, because then it's easier. The show just gets downloaded to you automatically. You don't have to seek it out. You can subscribe on most major podcast services, including iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn. And by the way, with regard to TuneIn, I believe I finally managed to get a hold of a human being at TuneIn, and I believe the Ride the Lightning logo, the cover art, should now show up. So if you're like me and you get real particular about wanting cover art for all your stuff, all your music and the stuff you listen to, and especially if you listen in your Tesla, take a look in your Tesla if you're an owner. please let me know, because you can search the podcast on there and find it and listen to it in your car. It should have the cover art now. Please let me know if it doesn't, so that I can go bother the tune-in folks again. Or, by the way, and I'll just mention the website, the hosting website that I use, if you want to just go listen to individual shows or pick up the RSS feed or download MP3 files, you can do that at teslapodcast.libsyn.com. That wraps it up for the 102nd edition of Ride the Lightning. We've got, let's see. Wow, just one more show until the big July 28th event. I really hope I'm able to go. One way or the other, though, we're going to have a lot to talk about. So happy electric motoring, and I will see you back here same time next week.